Good morning, class, and welcome to today's lesson. My name is Professor Derek Cody, and I'd like to welcome you to Crafting the Opening Scene. And today we're going to discuss some of the different techniques that you can use as you craft your opening scene, and ultimately what we're trying to accomplish by employing these different techniques. I've come up with a few examples here that we can discuss of some great opening scenes that have been used in classic literature throughout the years. But first, what are we trying to accomplish with our opening scene? One of the very first things we're trying to accomplish is to excite interest. And we want to grip the reader right at the onset. And so immediately with our first line, with our first paragraph, we want it so that the reader needs to know more. And they just have to keep reading. So that's one of the things that we're trying to accomplish as we craft our opening scene. Another thing that we're trying to accomplish is we want to introduce the story. And there are a couple of different ways we can introduce the story, and that's what we're going to cover in our examples here. And so one of the ways that we could introduce the story is by introducing the conflict. And the example that I came up with for this: as Gregor Samsa awoke from unsettling dreams one morning, he found himself transformed in his bed into a monstrous vermin. And that's the opening line from The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. And immediately, the conflict is introduced, and Gregory has been transformed into a monstrous vermin. And so as the reader, you immediately want to know more. You want to know how this happened. Why did this happen? What is Gregory going to do about it? So that's a great example of introducing the conflict as you craft the opening scene. Another way that you could craft your opening scene would be to introduce the setting. And the example that I came up with here is from 1984 by George Orwell. In the opening line he uses is, "It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. And so now this doesn't necessarily explore the landscape or the actual scenery of the setting, but it gives you information that immediately lets you know that this setting is different from the world that you and I know. The clocks in this world can strike 13. And so he introduces this setting, and there's already intrigue. And you already want to know, what is it about this world that these clocks strike 13? And obviously, many more questions will follow as you continue to read. The final example that I've come up with here is when you introduce the character at the beginning of the story. And for this example, I've used Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And this begins, "My father's family name being Perrip, and my Christian name, Philip, my infant tongue could make of both names nothing longer or more explicit than Pip. So I called myself Pip, and came to be called Pip." And so in this example, Pip is introduced to the reader. And it's a very casual introduction. There's no conflict. We have no idea of what the setting is. It's just Pip introducing himself to us as we read. And so these are just a few examples of how you could craft your opening scene. And if you use these techniques, that you're immediately trying to excite interest and grip your reader, but you also are introducing an element of the story. And so as we continue this class, we're going to keep this focus in mind and explore which technique might work for you as you craft your own opening scene.